G'day and welcome back to Reality Check. I'm, of course, your host, Ross Coulthart, and today we've got a continuing feature in our story about the Rendlesham Forest incident of December 1980. Those of us who watch Reality Check frequently will know we've been giving some attention to this vexing and intriguing UAP mystery from way back in the 1980s. The Rendlesham Forest incident, dubbed Britain's Roswell, occurred over several nights in late December 1980 near the RAF, the Royal Air Force Bentwaters and Woodbridge bases in Suffolk, England. They were US Air Force bases during the Cold War. Multiple US Air Force personnel reported seeing unexplained lights in the forest, with some claiming encounters with craft and even entities. This event involved nuclear weapons storage at the base, and it added to speculation of a cover-up or national security implications. Some of the key evidence includes Lieutenant Colonel Charles HALT'S January 1981 memo entitled Unexplained Lights, which was eventually provided to the media by the British authorities. It was his report of what he'd witnessed in the forest. There's also an audio tape from the investigation, which has also become public, which has gone into UAP law. It shows Colonel Holt breathlessly revealing what he's seeing with his team as he's walking through the forest. Now, skeptics, of course, have said that the sightings were just misidentifications of the Orford Ness Lighthouse, a meteor, bright stars such as Sirius, or natural phenomena like rabbits scraping for ground marks. But Colonel Holt is particularly peeved with our most recent interview with Larry Warren, who's a controversial witness in the Rendlesham story. And in order to provide Colonel Holt with an opportunity to respond, he's joining us today. I first interviewed Chuck Holt in 2009. It's lovely to have you back, Colonel. Welcome to Reality Check.
Well, thank you. My pleasure to be here.
So, sir, obviously you've seen the interview that we did with Larry Warren, and Larry Warren describes being in the forest on the same evening as you. And if that's correct, that means that he was there on the evening of the 27th going into the 28th of December 1980. He claims that you were there in the forest on the evening that he saw a craft and entities, beings of some kind. What is your response, sir?
That Larry Warren was not there that night, very clearly.
So tell me what you believe is the case with Larry Warren. Was he ever in the forest at all?
No. In fact, I talked to his girlfriend, Cookie Vaughn, who was her nickname, after the incident, and she said he was in the dormitory drinking at a party that night. And he was very upset the fact that he missed the whole event, so to speak.
Now, the reason why we decided to air Larry Warren's claims last week is because his claim is supported by two witnesses. One of them appeared on the program with Larry, a guy called Steve Longero. Are you saying that Steve's fabricating as well?
I don't know what motivated him, but I can tell you, let's start from the start with it. He's on sea flight. The security police had 4 flights, 4 different groups of people that rotated shifts. They would work for 3 nights on midnight, 3 nights on days, 3 nights on, and then after the 9-day cycle, they would get a 3-day break. Sea flight, which Steve Longero was on sea flight. He definitely said he was there, and he probably was at Bentwaters, and he was in the WSA assigned there. For starters, once you're assigned in the WSA, you do not go anywhere else on your flight. You do not do anything except your assigned position there.
So just to explain to our audience, Colonel, WSA is the weapons storage area. And I know
a very secure area that had exchange badges and sensors and fences and all sorts of interesting things.
I know you can't comment, but there was almost certainly nuclear weapons in the weapons storage area. So,
Well, I don't talk about that, so
yeah,
you can draw your own conclusion.
sure.
It's
So
even been said
you
that
don't believe that Steve Longero at all left the RAF Bentwaters weapons storage area that night at all?
He couldn't leave the area. He was not. He would have been AWOL, and he couldn't have gotten out. There's no way he could have gotten out of there until the end of the shift. But let me explain. Sea Flight finished their tour. Sea Flight was Peniston, Burroughs, and Cabanas and several, all their compadres. They went on break the next day for 3 days, so he would not even been on duty for 3 days. Sea Flight was gone. They were at home. Burroughs was on Sea Flight. Burroughs came out the night and was out there, but he hitchhiked to ride back out to the base. He was not on duty. So he couldn't have been on duty.
Let's just explain to our audience, because one thing I've learned with Rendlesham is it is infernally complicated, because we're talking about multiple nights, multiple events alleged, and multiple people. So the first evening where something unusual or anomalous occurred, that included Peniston, Burroughs, and Cabanas.
Correct.
They went into the forest to investigate strange lights, and in the course of their time in the forest, Cabanas was sort of intermediary halfway into the forest. Peniston and Burroughs went on further, and they came across what I think Peniston particularly describes as a craft. And he's given an extremely detailed account of coming across a craft in the forest. Do you dispute anything about Peniston or Burroughs or Cabanas's accounts?
The only thing I can say about that is I'm not really I have problems with some of the things they've said. They changed their story. I do know that they had an encounter. They did witness something. There was obviously lights. Multiple people saw the lights, from the east gate. What happened was John Burroughs was on patrol at Bentwaters base. He went up to check the integrity of the back gate because it was occasionally left unlocked. He saw lights in the forest. He came back and called the desk sergeant. The desk sergeant immediately called air traffic control and everybody you can think of to try and verify if it was a donned aircraft or whatever. Peniston was in the dining hall having a midnight chow. He was called out as the area supervisor for security at Woodbridge Base. He arrived with Airman Cabanas. Airman Cabanas was new to the base, so he was riding with Peniston to familiarize himself with the base. They all gathered at the gate, and they looked, and there's definitely something in the forest. So it's decided somebody will go out, and Peniston says, I'll go, and he asked Bud Steffens, one of the other cops, to go with him, and Bud Steffens says, I don't feel good about this, I don't want to go. And John Burroughs volunteered. So Peniston took Cabanas, who was riding with him, and they took a Jeep. They went out the East Gate Road, turned right, went about 100 yards, turned left down a rutty trail, not a road, a rutty trail into the forest. They got so far and they hit a berm, and they were having problems with the radios. So Peniston left Cabanas at the vehicle or near the vehicle to act as a radio relay, which is quite common to do. And he and Burroughs confronted something. And I really don't know what happened because they told different stories at different times.
So that was on the first night. Now, we know that there were other incidents, but I want to get to the evening of the 27th into the 28th of December, which is when reportedly you went out into the forest.
Yes, there were 3 nights, and I went out what we consider the third night. It was a Saturday night.
And what happened? Take me through, I know you and I have done this before, but take me through what happened on that night. How did you
want me to start before the forest or in the forest?
Yes, sir. Tell me about how you were approached in the mess.
Okay, we were having a year-end get-together for all the officers in the combat support group at the Woody Bar. It's an extension of the Officers Club. It's a World War II fighter club, they called it. We had just finished dinner and getting ready for dessert when Bruce England, the on-duty flight lieutenant, came in white as a sheet. Now, Bruce was not a typical lieutenant. Bruce had been in the Marine Corps for 3 or 4 years, got out, got a degree, came into the Air Force, so he was a seasoned person. He wasn't some flighty guy that got excited about nothing. And he came in and he approached me and he said, "It's back. We need to talk." So the base commander and I went into the cloakroom, which was the only private little room there except the bathrooms. And he explained that they saw lights in the forest. They went out and there was something out there in the forest. So it was decided that I would go out. Conrad, the base commander, had to give a speech and do some presentations. So I said to Mel Zickler, the security police commander, "I'm going to go home and change clothes and put on a utility uniform, my fatigues. Come by and pick me up in a little bit and we'll go out there and we'll put this thing to rest and get it over with once and for all."
Can I ask you this, Chuck? When he said "it's back," that implies that you had prior knowledge of whatever these objects were. What were you aware of? Had there been a report made to you and the base commander prior?
No, what had happened the first night, that's the night Pennison, Burroughs, and Cabanas went out, I come in to pick up the police blotters in the morning, around 6 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. And when I walked in the door of the police office, the desk sergeant started to laugh. And I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "Burroughs, Pennison, Cabanas were out in the woods chasing UFOs all night, and the lieutenant said don't put anything in the police blotter." I said, "What?" I thought he was joking at first. I said, "Tell me what you know." He said, "Well, when he explained around midnight, he got a call from Burroughs at the East Gate that they thought they saw a downed aircraft, and they went out to investigate, and they came across something, and that the desk sergeant didn't know too much more than that." I said, "Well, put something in the blotter about there were some unexplained lights or something out there," and I picked up the blotters. I took them up to the office, and we all had a chuckle, UFOs. We all thought it was funny. We didn't really take it too seriously, but I was aware there was something was going on. So that's why I knew there was something happened.
Can I also ask Chuck at this point, one of the claims that's been made by multiple witnesses is that in the days prior to these events, there was a large cargo aircraft that arrived, a military cargo aircraft that arrived and was deployed to a remote part of the tarmac, which is immediately adjacent to the Rendlesham Forest. It was apparently put there in the days prior to this incident. Not a lot of people know a lot about it, but people who are aware of the tarmac having to be strengthened have told me that, that they knew that this aircraft was located in this area in the days prior. And there's been some speculation that this is in some way connected to what we're talking about. Are you aware of this strange and unusual cargo aircraft? I think it might have been a C-5
Yes.
being located.
Yes, it was a C-5. What was unusual was it arrived, I believe, on Monday. Now, keep in mind the incidents happened over the weekend. As I remember, the plane arrived on Monday. It did not land at Bentwaters, which was normal for cargo aircraft, especially C-5s, because we had a special C-5 pad, and that's where the transit facilities were. The plane landed at Woodbridge and taxied off onto a somewhat secluded pad. And the interesting thing is the crew wore uniforms, blue uniforms without any markings on them. And normally when a C-5 or a transit aircraft comes in, if it needs security, for instance, if it's the ABCC command post aircraft or anything, we provided security. In this particular case, they provided their own security. What I thought at the time, it was a D.O.E, Department of Energy, people doing a special inspection or something, because they didn't tell us anything. I didn't know anything about it except it was there.
Can I ask you, sir, that's very significant to me because the D.O.E features a lot in covert alleged retrievals. People wearing D.O.E jackets were seen in the Jonathan Wygant case in Peru. Why do you think it was D.O.E? Is it speculation on your part, or did you see evidence suggesting it was
just speculation? Why else would somebody come in with a strange crew and provide their own security? That was very unusual.
Why would they wear no insignia? I thought it was a requirement of the military code that all uniformed men wear insignia.
It wasn't my place to ask questions because obviously they were doing something very classified.
Is it true, by the way, that this remote area of the tarmac at Woodbridge was the area immediately adjacent to the forest?
I don't remember which pad it was on, to be honest with you. I just know it was at Woodbridge and I saw it over there. And I asked some questions to some of the cops, why you guys weren't providing security? And they said we were told what they were doing their own.
And did you see any of the activity of what these people in this particular part of the tarmac were doing during that time that they were there?
Didn't see anything they were doing. I don't know what they were doing.
Were they there when the Rendlesham incident went down?
No, they arrived afterwards.
They arrived afterwards, so it was not
They
prior.
arrived, I believe they arrived on Monday, possibly Tuesday.
And the event
The
was
incident
on
happened
the
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yep. Okay, so that's interesting. So definitely wasn't prior to the Rendlesham Forest incident that began on the Thursday. Okay, so thanks, Chuck. I'll keep on going. So what happens? You decide to go and investigate.
So I went home and changed clothes, and Bruce England, the police lieutenant, came by with Bobby Ball, Master Sergeant Ball. We picked up Sergeant Neville's disaster preparedness. I had already asked to have him to join us. And I asked him to bring a Diasio and a camera. He had a Nikon F2, and I told him to put some high-speed film. He put Tri-X, which is high-speed black and white film. And we all bundled into the Jeep. We went over into the motor pool to get gas because the gas was low in the Jeep. And there were light-alls there, and a couple cops were arguing with the fuel attendant. And I said, come on, pack it in. We want gas, and I want to go. I want to get back to the party. So we went over across the base, out the back gate, and down into the forest. And when I got out into the forest, I was shocked. There were 4 or 5 vehicles, 2 or 3 light-alls, and probably 15, maybe a few or more or less cops milling around. And the first thing I thought is, this is a public relations disaster. If we get caught out in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night like this with all this stuff, we'll never live it down and never hear the end of it. So I told the cops to be quiet. So Bruce England says, I want to show you where this thing landed 2 nights before. I said, okay. So Bobby Ball, Neville's, myself, and he picked up Adrian Bastenza. Now Bastenza had apparently gone back to the base to bring up light-alls or something, and had just arrived back. So Bastenza came with me along with the other 3. He never left my side till we left the forest, except on one occasion, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. They take me up to the site where this supposed landing happened, and they show me the indentations. And while we're milling around taking readings, we're getting radiation readings, not dangerous, but just enough that there's way beyond the background radiation. The area in the center of the triangle formed by the 3 indentations has a much higher reading than the outside edges do. And when we take the Geiger counter against the trees, the side of the tree toward the landing site reads much higher than the back side of the tree. And I'm thinking, this is weird. How am I ever going to explain this? And while we're milling around trying to figure out what to do, somebody said, what's that we see out in the forest? We look out into the farmer's field. Between us and the farmer's house, we can see a glowing orange object. I'd say about the size of a large beach ball, maybe a little larger. It's oval, not completely round, and has a dark center. And it appears like it's almost like it's winking. And it's shedding sparks or some kind of molten metal or something. And I'm saying, what is this? I'm seeing ball lightning, the first thing I thought. Well, it wasn't ball lightning. It stayed in the field for a little while. And we watched it came into the forest. It actually came in and...
Can I ask you, sir, the farmer's field, as you refer to it, is that what we understand to be called CAPEL Green? CAPEL Green?
Well, I don't know where CAPEL Green starts and stops, but the farmer's field was directly in front of us, between us and the farmer's house.
Now, this is significant because the events that Larry Warren purports to describe, and indeed he is supported in this by Steve Longero and I think also by, I think you used the name Bastenza, Mr. Bastenza. Multiple witnesses say another event took place on CAPEL Green at the same time on the same evening, possibly involving the same object. Is it possible? I'm just exploring possibilities here, just devil's advocating, doing my job. Is it possible that contemporaneously, at the same time as you were in the forest with this group of people, another group of people were witnessing what was transpiring on the green near the farmer's house?
Well, for starters, when I arrived at what I call the assembly area where the light-alls were and all the vehicles, I told everybody to stay there not to leave, and to be very quiet and cut off radio communication because people could hear it or overhear it. A lot of people have scanners, and I didn't want a lot of publicity. Bastenza stayed at my side the whole time I was in the forest. The only time he left my side is when we were ready to come back. We came back to the assembly area, and John Burroughs had showed up. He hitchhiked out from Ipswich Town. He was not on duty. He said, I want to go forward and look again at that site. I said, all right. And he said, I'll take Bastenza with me. The two of them, just the two of them, went forward, and I could see them the whole time. Now, I wasn't watching them the whole time. They may have had an encounter. They came back and did not say anything. They saw anything unusual, or no comments. We went back to the base. Later, Bastenza and Burroughs said they had an encounter with something, but they never mentioned Larry Warren was not with them. There was just the two of them. And they were never more than 100 yards away, and we could see through the forest.
No, I understand that. I'm just exploring one of the sayings in my line of work, Chuck. We actually use another line, more vulgar, is we always assume a screw up before a conspiracy. So I'm trying to find my way between the two accounts of Larry Warren and yourself to see if it's possible that, nobody's lying. It's just that you were in different parts of the forest that night. Is it possible that where Bastenza and John Burroughs went was close enough to the green, the CAPEL green area, the farmer's house area, that they saw what was going down on the green?
Well, CAPEL Green is a large area. It's not just one little place. It was the whole area out in front of where we were, which included the farmer's house.
So is it possible, though, that something was going down? I mean, God forbid, American soldiers do occasionally disobey the orders of a senior officer such as yourself. There's all these men in the forest, we know that. Is it possible that they disobeyed you and saw lights or something happening on the green and went and had a look? And so that encounter happened independently of you doing what you were doing in the forest. I'm just wondering whether there's a possibility there.
All I can say is I didn't see anybody else. I could see them the whole time, but I wasn't watching the whole time.
Yeah, it did cross my mind, though, when you described this large group of security police who were in the forest with the light-alls and the jeeps. It's possible, isn't it, that what transpired was in the course of packing up and moving back to the base, they maybe stretched things a little and took a peek at what was going down on the farmer's green, the CAPEL green area.
I can't comment. I don't know.
Sure. So one of the things that is very significant, Colonel, is you kept an audio tape, didn't you, of what you were seeing? Tell me what you did.
I carried it all the time. I always carried the tape with me.
You were narrating as you were watching this object coming through the forest, like a big eye.
I was erasing?
Narrating, sorry. You were speaking into the tape recorder.
I didn't have spare batteries, and I didn't know how much tape I had, so I only turned it on whenever I saw something was happening. That's why there's a break, continuous breaks.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is, on that audio tape, there is the sound of sirens in the distance. And the witnesses who say that they saw something on CAPEL Green, including Larry Warren, they say that British police were in attendance on the CAPEL Green, and when you listen to those sirens, they are a distinctive British siren noise. Wee-wah, wee-wah, that kind of siren noise that is peculiarly English, not American sirens. Are you aware of that siren noise that's on your audio tape? Because a lot of people...
No, I'm not. I'm aware there's a bar of music on there. I was playing the tape for somebody, and the record button and the play button were the same button.
Right.
My daughter was practicing piano when I was playing the tape for somebody, so there's a bar of music.
Because a lot of people have focused on those siren noises because there were allegedly, according to multiple witnesses, British police on the green watching this craft that is described by Larry Warren. And I think maybe at this point I should just remind our audience what it was that Mr. Warren says he saw. He claims that he was present at CAPEL Green, a field near the forest, which I think is the farmer's field you're describing. He saw a triangular craft 30 to 40 feet wide land. It emitted a glow. Non-human entities, 3 to 4 feet tall, in silver suits, disembarked. He says they interacted with the base commander, Colonel Gordon Williams, not you. There's been some
Gordon
confusion.
Williams is the wing commander, not the base commander.
Right, understood. Is there any knowledge on your part that the base commander, the wing commander, Gordon Williams, was in the forest that night?
No, let me explain. Gordon Williams' staff car was a a Ford Crown Vic, sort of like police cars in those days. Warren claims he drove down into the forest and drove out into the field. Well, for starters, you couldn't have gone down into the forest without a four-wheel drive, high-centered vehicle. That's why we had the Jeep. There was a berm you couldn't get over without a tracked vehicle, and you had to go through a barbed wire fence. He claims Williams drove out into the field. Williams had a staff with him, including Don Moreland, the RAF liaison officer. Don Moreland was in Wales on holiday. That's why my memo was 2 weeks later and coming out. Don Moreland couldn't have been there. Gordon Williams, when I talked to him the following morning, which I did, said he was entertaining British guests at his house. And I talked to his wife several times, and she said 2 cops came to the door and told Williams what was going on, and he came back to the group, his party at the house. He never went into the forest.
Do you know if the British police came into the forest?
No, they did not. In fact, I went to Suffolk Constabulary, who the chief was a friend of mine, and had him pull all the logs for all the events going to Bentwaters over that time frame. And the only log they have of 2 police officers, and the one assigned to the base, came out into the forest on the morning after the first incident, so that would have been the 28th. And they were there. And there's actually pictures available of them taking a look at the site.
So, Colonel, one of the things you described earlier was a Nikon F2 camera with a roll of high-speed film on it. Were photographs taken of the object that you saw in the forest?
Yes. I was very familiar. I had an F2 myself. I had 2 of them, in fact, a series of lenses.
What happened to those photographs?
Monroe Nevels had his own darkroom on base housing. He had taken one of the bedrooms and painted the walls flat black, caused all kinds of problems later. I mean, that's another story. He claims he developed the film and it all came out fogged. Now, in my opinion, the radiation we found on the site was not enough to affect the film. But I don't know. He could have made a mistake in the darkroom. It's easy to do. Somebody could have messed with it. Who knows?
Was there any interference at all before he developed the film by any of the agencies that were investigating this? Were they aware that there'd been a camera in the forest? Is it possible?
I don't think they were aware that he had been out in the forest and taken pictures. He took pictures of the trees, he took pictures of the ground, the indentations, he took pictures, he tried to, of the object. I don't know what. I told him you're not going to get much in the, consider the situation.
Was he using a flash, sir, or just high-speed film?
No, just high-speed film.
Right.
You can push it the ASA 78900.
Now, one of the claims that Mr. Warren also makes is that on the CAPEL Green there were video cameras and film cameras, that there was a film camera brought from the base video office or film office. Are you aware of any cameras being deployed that night?
There were no cameras present.
Were there cameras on the base? Was there a film set on the base?
I'm not even sure the base photo lab had. I don't know. I knew they had 35 millimeter cameras. I don't know that they had video cameras.
Right. Okay. I just want to talk about Steve Longero. He basically says he saw Warren in the forest, and he also corroborates this landing at CAPEL Green. You dispute Steve Longero's account as well.
Either his memory's faulty or yes, I have no idea. I do know that Larry Warren approached several people and asked them to lie and say he was with them, and they were with him in the forest and they saw the UFO. Steve LaPlume is one of them who sent me an email and said, he's lying. He's lying, obviously.
It's interesting because everybody seems to disagree with each other in this whole story. I notice Adrian Bustinza, he supported Larry Warren's presence in the forest at CAPEL Green as well in some interviews. He actually had a swipe at you, basically criticising you for conspiracy claims, describing them as embarrassing. Let's talk about that. I mean, subsequent to these events, there was an investigation, wasn't there? There were personnel from elsewhere in the US military that were brought in to investigate the Rendlesham incident. What can you tell me about what transpired?
Well, I can only tell you what I have secondhand from the parties that were involved. Sea Flight, who went out the first night, that's Penniston Burroughs, Cabanatuck, were definitely taken in to the OSI office, definitely given, harsh interrogation with drugs and hypnosis. Adrian Bustinza was also treated to that.
Forgive me for interrupting, Colonel. So OSI is the US Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
That's correct.
It's an investigative agency inside the US Air Force. Were OSI based at Rendlesham? Were there people from OSI at Rendlesham who were doing these interrogations?
Yes, we had 5 or 6 agents. We had an office there.
And so were they the people who administered the drugs that you described?
No, they were not, according to the people that told me.
So there were people brought in.
There were people brought in from London Embassy, perhaps, or from the CIA, and obviously MA agency from British intelligence.
Why do you say the British were involved?
Because the guys that were interrogated told me they had British presence there.
And what was the nature of the interrogation? Do you think that they were being fairly questioned, or do you think that this was intended to discourage them from continuing with their allegations that they'd seen something anomalous?
What I have to assume is that number one, they wanted to know exactly what happened. That's why they used sodium pentothal, sodium emerald, or something comparable in the hypnosis. They also wanted to control what was said, so they probably induced some screen memories. I can tell you they screwed Penniston and Bustinza up something terrible, and they were never the same.
I mean, this is horrendous that US servicemen were treated in this way, and indeed servicewomen. I've spoken as well to Laurie Riffeld. It shocks me that the US military would behave like this to its own service personnel. Why do you believe these accounts? I mean, I'm sorry to be disputing the veracity of the people involved, but you clearly accept that there are multiple witnesses attesting to the veracity of what they say happened to them. You don't dispute that they were given sodium pentothal and aggressively interrogated.
I don't know that it was sodium pentothal. The OSI has a list of over 450 different drugs they can use in questioning people. I know the OSI commander personally who was there at the time, Chuck. We won't go into his name. I don't want to embarrass him. But I asked him after the incident, did they have any interest at all in it? And he said no. He said, we don't have anything to do with that. That's a bunch of nonsense.
So he was lying?
Oh, of course.
Do you believe that John Burroughs, it's very much public record. I know I actually spoke at one stage to Senator John McCain before he passed, and he related the efforts that he'd made to recover John Burroughs' medical records that showed that he was exposed to something anomalous in the forest that gave him injuries. Do you believe that John did suffer injuries as a result of his exposure to the object in the forest?
I'm pretty well convinced. I also wrote a 2-page letter to the Veterans Administration and John and Jim Penniston's behalf, explaining what happened, and there was a good probability that caused the problem.
So, obviously,
a copy of that letter is readily available.
Yeah, I'm skating across a lot of the detail of the Rendlesham incident because we've already run a lot of the detail of your allegations about what you saw that night and what everybody else saw that night. I'm more interested in the follow-up. Were you ever told by anyone to shut up about this incident?
The only thing I was told after the incident on Monday, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday after the incident, I talked with Williams and said, well, what'll I do? And he explained to me what happened at the 3rd Air Force when I took my tape and played it for the general. And he said, it's a British affair. He said, get with Don Moreland and see what he wants to do. So I had to wait almost 2 weeks because Don Moreland was in Wales on Christmas holiday. When he came back, I went over and briefed him. Of course, he went into shock. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I don't know. He said, give me something to talk from. So I wrote that infamous memo. It was only for his eyes. It was not to go to MOD. It was not to go released. It was not classified. It was just a here's what I know, and I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And you know the rest of the story. Except
I mean, it's a great memo, Chuck. I have to admit, it's every journalist's dream to find a memo like that inside an archive.
Well, you know how that came out, don't you?
Well, didn't the British authorities release it?
Well, what happened was Mr. Warren went back to the States and was running around with his hair on fire, talking to everybody, anybody. And he ran into several people. Larry Fawcett and Barry Greenwood, who wrote Clear Intent. And they came into Bentwaters with a FOIA request for any information. So we didn't have any. We didn't keep anything. We all wanted it to go away. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. All the way up to the 4-star level, and I can talk about that a bit. But anyhow, we went back and said we don't have anything. Well, they went to 3rd Air Force. Next thing I know, Pete Ben, who was the acting 3rd Air Force commander, called me on the phone. He was a personal friend of mine. He said, Chuck, I've got this memo. I'm going to have to release it under FOIA. I said, where did you get it? He said, I got it from the liaison officer. Apparently, Don Moreland sent a copy to his boss at 3rd Air Force, and they provided it to the Air Force. The Air Force, of course, the 3rd Air Force released it, and you won't believe what happened to me. ITV, German TV, BBC One, BBC Two, German TV, Japanese TV, Radio Orwell. I had to go into hiding.
Australian TV too, if you remember, Chuck. I mean, the interesting thing
I was furious.
Yeah.
Then Sam Morgan gave a copy of the tape to Harry Harris, and he sold it to the Japanese, who managed to make it went public there. So did I have a choice? I had to talk.
Look, can I just say, sir, I deeply respect the fact that you showed the courage and the decency in backing the veracity of what you assert in that memo. It would have been very, very easy for you to decline comment. And I think the public is indebted to you for being open and being prepared to be honest about what you say you saw. I'm still trying to get to the truth of what happened that night, because a lot of people say to me, there are multiple witnesses to what took place on CAPEL Green. So in order for Larry Warren to be a liar, other people must be liars as well. And I'm just considering the possibility that, unbeknownst to you, while you were in the forest that night, another group of security police, including Larry Warren, were in the CAPEL Green area viewing what they allegedly say they viewed on the green. And I appreciate there are inconsistencies, there are people alleged to be there who weren't there, but is it possible that that took place and went down without your knowledge?
Well, we know for a fact that Don Moreland wasn't there. We know for a fact that Gordon Williams wasn't there. Bastenza was with me the whole time. So how could this have happened? You tell me.
Why would these people fake a whole story like this? I don't understand why they would make this up.
Larry Warren is a very skillful psychopath that can lie like you can't believe. You need to follow his history all the way back from Project Bullpen in the States, where he got involved in that, if you're familiar with it. Sports memorabilia fraud. His fraud in England, where he sold John Lennon's glasses, hat, and jacket, where he sold Stevie Vaughan's guitar, all fakes. His fake Bud Hopkins paintings. I mean, the list is endless. I could give you a list of people that have actually had him. He stayed and lived with them for a while until they found out all that and just went crazy. He's taken advantage of so many people.
So why would Bustinza and Longero support his allegations that he was in the forest that night at Capel Green?
Well, I don't know. We know that number one, the first night, Steve Longero was in the weapons storage area. And Larry Warren says he wasn't out there the first night, so that rules that out. The only night he could have been out there was when I was there, and he wasn't on duty. He was on sea flight. They were on break.
Sure. Can I ask you this more broadly, Colonel? Do you believe there was a cover-up of the events transpired in the forest over those 3 nights?
I think Larry's been used as disinformation. He's fit right in with their scheme. Believe me, there's no better way to make something ridiculous than to, embellish it and make it sound like something really wild. Larry did you ever ask for his discharge? He has a coded discharge that says he can never re-enlist, he can never work for the government, he can never hold a security clearance. He was booted out for unsuitable, undesirable.
Okay, I'm just going to come back now to the C5 story. You're 100% sure, are you, the C5 arrived after the incident? Because some witnesses placed that aircraft arriving prior to the incident.
It's possible, but I only remember seeing it on Monday or Tuesday the following week.
Because it's been suggested to me that the C5 might have been part of a psionics team. As you know, there are allegations that the United States has been working with people who have the capacity to, in some way, telepathically engage with non-human technology, non-human craft or entities. And it's been suggested to me that this might have been what's called a link loss, that they were using psionics that had come in on the C5 as an experiment to operate these objects, these craft, on British soil. The whole thing was, of course, shrouded in secrecy. We can't rule out that possibility. Does the conduct of the authorities in relation to all of this show any inconsistency with that thesis? It strikes me that there was, from the get-go, an attempt, firstly, to find out what went down in the forest that night and what people saw, but then the next reaction from the US military and intelligence community was to shut it down and to shut everybody up, which doesn't seem consistent with this being something that the US didn't know about.
Quite possibly. The interesting thing is the 4-star general commander of U.S. Air Forces in Europe came to the base not very long after the incident, and I learned years later that he was given a copy of my memo and a copy of my tape. The British were quite upset because they didn't receive a copy.
And did you have any opportunity to speak to the 4-star general involved?
I did, but he didn't ask me anything about the incident, and I certainly didn't bring it up.
Right.
The unusual thing is nobody ever approached me. Nobody ever debriefed me. Nobody ever said, do this, don't do that. I got promoted. Now, in 1980, you have to understand the environment. If you reported a UFO, that was a killer. That was, it was not career enhancing at all. That was the end of it. It didn't happen to me.
It did your career no harm, which again implies to me very strongly that the US kind of knew what this was.
They definitely knew what it was. Gordon Williams got involved after the fact. He was aware of what happened to the people with the interrogation. When he was at California several years later on a follow-on assignment, the then chief of staff, who'd been the 4-star in Europe at the time and a good personal friend of his, had him go out and investigate an incident that he claimed did something to his health. Now, on his deathbed, he contacted several people, including James Fox, and he also contacted Sarah Krisky, a UFOlogist in the UK, who was working on Capel Green film or something. And he said he wanted to get in touch with me. He had something on his deathbed he wanted to say. Unfortunately, he died before we had a chance to talk to him. But he did talk to his kids. They contacted me, and I contacted them back. And we made arrangements to meet, and they were going to tell me what he said on his deathbed because he wanted to make a confession. They changed their mind, and then they shut up. So I pushed him hard, and he said, for $10,000, I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you what I learned. I said, I don't pay $10,000 for that. I'd like to know, but I'm not going to pay you $10,000.
So you've never been told to shut up about it, but you
Never.
do believe that there was an effort to stop these people from... There was an effort to discredit the story.
Never. Never. That's interesting. That's hard to believe, I know, but it's true.
I mean,
And
this
I'm
is...
not part of a conspiracy. I was never ready on anything of, as far as a conspiracy and what they were doing behind the scenes.
Are you aware of any allegations of any film or video being taken anywhere by anyone involving this incident?
No, none whatsoever. The only camera I ever saw was the Nikon that Monroe Nevels was carrying.
Right. And did you ever get the opportunity to speak directly to the wing commander, Williams, about whether he went into the forest that night?
Yes, well, I know. When I ran into him the following morning was Sunday morning. I came back home. I got home around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I took a shower because I was wet and muddy. I got in a stream. I decided to go in the office. And the office was a big Quonset hut with a foyer in the center, the wing commander's office on one side and our office, the base commander's on the other side. And as I got to the front door, he drove in. So I waited and opened the door for him. And the first thing he said to me was, that was some night you had last night, because he overheard all my conversations with the command post when I was asking him to check with the radar and do this and do that. And I said, I made a tape. He said, come on in the office, play the tape. So I played the tape for him. That was Monday. He said, I'm going to take it to the staff meeting, 3rd Air Force staff meeting on Wednesday. They had a meeting every Wednesday morning, and play the tape.
But did he specifically say that he'd been at home that night? I mean, did he say anything that was in...
He said he's entertaining. I went to his wake, or his celebration of life, several years ago when he passed away. And his ex-wife, who was his wife at the time, Marge, was there, and I knew her because she was a bit of a problem on the base. Believe me, she was an interesting person. So I said to her, do you remember that night? She says, very distinctly. She said, I remember those 2 cops coming, and Gordon wouldn't tell me anything about what the cops told him. What had happened is Conrad sent 2 cops over to inform him because he didn't want to put anything on the radio. He wanted them to know that I was out in the forest.
So you're 100% sure that he didn't go with those police to somewhere in the forest? Can you rule out the possibility?
Absolutely positive.
Right, okay. All right, so there we have it. I mean, we have all of these inconsistencies in the Rendlesham story. Let's talk about what we do know for sure. Do you believe that what you saw that night was some kind of non-human intelligence?
Definitely. Whatever came into the forest that night had to be intelligently controlled. It avoided the trees. It bobbed up and down and went around through the trees. When we tried to approach it, it went back out into the field and exploded.
Do you believe that the United States was genuinely interested in trying to investigate what happened that night?
Definitely.
Do you believe that sections of the US military, notably the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, interrogated aggressively some of your subordinates and used some kind of drugs to compel them to reveal the full story?
Yes, but I don't think the OSI did it. Experts came in from, like I say, CIA and British intelligence. Tennyson distinctly remembers one of them was a Navy commander in uniform.
A British Navy commander or
No,
American?
American.
Do you remember the rank?
No, he said commander. That's all I know. I didn't see
Oh, sorry. It was actually the commander rank. Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's equivalent to lieutenant colonel.
yes. Do you believe there's been an active disinformation program and cover-up by sections of the US military and intelligence community about Rendlesham in the years subsequent?
Definitely, and Larry Warren's part of it. Maybe unknowingly.
You believe he's been unwittingly used?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Didn't take much to get him to be cooperate with it, no.
I'm not going to buy into this blue, but I'm fascinated by it because fundamentally at the heart of all of this, Colonel, we shouldn't get distracted by the fact that something anomalous did happen in the forest that night.
Definitely. Now, several people have told me, and I believe them, there are incidents before and after that relate to this. In fact, I did a program for Unsolved Mysteries years ago. And at the end of the program, they say, if you have any further information, call the Fall Cosgrove Muir at this number. 100 and some people called in, and I got some very interesting stories, including some where some of the people in the WSA actually shot at an object years before.
So there's been previous encounters involving anomalous objects over what I will say were the nuclear weapons storage areas at the base.
Oh, definitely. 2 weeks after Williams and I kind of settled down, and still joked about it a little bit, he said, next time something like that happens, give me a call. 2 weeks later, Sergeant, security policeman, called the desk and said he was at Woodbridge Base, and he and his partner saw and were watching a UFO. They called me, the desk called me, I called Williams. We both raced over. I beat him there because I could get across the base with my little TR-8, and he had to go around with his big staff car. We got there and it was gone. So we were very disappointed. We both went back home, and a day or two later they told me it came back, but they were afraid to call me because they were so disappointed and embarrassed that, it was gone, whatever it was. Guy Fawkes night the following year, two cops at Woodbridge Base saw a large cigar-shaped object float over the base, but they reported it later, after the fact. They didn't want to be involved in it. They told me all about it, but a week or two later.
Wow, so there's been a concurrence of incidents. There's been quite a series of incidents that have gone unreported at Rendlesham.
Oh, well, probably dozens. I'm just guessing.
Why?
There's something about that area. There's an attraction of some type, or a portal, or some reason that the people at the penal colony and the people at the power station.
Okay, let me ask you about that, because there's a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, Simon Holland, who does his own podcast, and he speculated that it's linked to tests that the British were doing at different secret facilities in and around the area. Is it possible, do you think, that there was some kind of weaponry being tested in the area that might have explained all of this?
Well, John Burroughs is firmly convinced that there's some type of testing of high-frequency pulsed radar that may have affected him. I don't know. I can't comment. I don't have any knowledge of it. I wouldn't rule it out. There's a lot of stuff that went on in the base that even the base commander and I didn't know about. We didn't have a need to know.
It's funny, I don't know how you guys in the military put up with that kind of compartmentalization. I wouldn't last 5 minutes in the military because I'd always want to know what was going on. If somebody tells me I'm not allowed to know something, I immediately need to know about it. So
well,
can I
tell you
ask you
something
this?
interesting? Later in my career, when I ran the D.O.E. IG inspection directorate, we did an organizational inspection of DIA and NSA. I went out on the inspection in brief for the NSA, and it didn't take me long to figure out, or my team chief to figure out, that every time you opened the door there was another door and you weren't going through that second door, that the director of the NSA has no idea what the hell they're doing. It's
Actually,
so compartmentalized.
I didn't realize you'd worked as the DOD Inspector General. So you were actually...
all the teams work for me.
So this is really interesting because, of course, the DOD IG, the Inspector General of the Defence Force, is one of the bodies that's meant to be oversighting the veracity of claims about UFO incidents. Mm-hmm. In practice, when you were doing that job, it's quite clear from what you're saying here that it's very easy to snow the Inspectors General. True?
When I did the Unsolved Mysteries program, prior to doing it, I was still on active duty. I was serving in the DOD IG. They approached me about doing the program, so I was a little reluctant. So I went to the DOD IG himself, and I said, here's what happened. What do you think? And he sat down and listened to everything I ran him through. It took about an hour, everything I knew. He said, do it. I went and did it.
It's one thing I love about America is that there is still a culture of openness and transparency. But as you say, there's always another door. And if they don't want you to go through that door,
You don't.
even in the Inspector General of the Defence Department, you'd never get through it. True?
True.
Can I
My
ask you this,
credentials
Chuck?
said I could go anywhere, any place, in any facility. That was not true.
Well, let me say, I'm aware, for example, of alleged deep underground military bases in the United States that may or may not be known to Congress. I suspect they're not disclosed to Congress, and I suspect they've been kept secret from all of the oversight agencies, including the DODIG. If you turned up with the powers of the DODIG, knocked on the door and said, I want to come in, what would happen?
You wouldn't get in. I can tell you two stories. One thing, when I was in Belgium, I can talk about this because it's open. We had a weapon storage area for our intermediate missiles. Same thing, similar to what was at Bentwaters. 3 senior members on the Senate Armed Services Committee showed up on the base and wanted to go in the weapon storage area. They didn't get in. We tried to get them in. We could not get the clearance to let them in. They could not go in.
And why was that? What were they trying to hide?
Nothing. It's just the procedure is that nobody goes in without the following exchange badge and so on and so forth, being perfectly vetted.
You might be aware that the Transparency Subcommittee of the Oversight Committee in the House of Congress there were 3 members of the Congress who tried to get access to pilots at an Air Force base in Florida who were reporting anomalous objects that they'd seen. I think a lot of us have this expectation that organisations, institutions like the Inspectors General of the Intelligence Community, Inspector General of the Defence Department, that you have these incredible powers, you can kick any door in that you want. I don't understand what's going wrong with oversight, because clearly somebody is covering something up inside the military intelligence community in the United States, and even the bodies that we entrust to do the oversight aren't getting the access they need to do their jobs. Do you agree?
100%.
If you were asked, Colonel, I appreciate it's a long time ago now, gosh, what is that, 45 years. If you were asked, would you be prepared to give evidence under oath in a public hearing about what you witnessed at Rendlesham? Would you like to see...
I've already volunteered to do that.
Would you like to see a full, open, public accounting and transparency about what took place that night? I'd like to see subpoenas. I'd like to see the Congress start
You're not going to
developing
find
some
out.
teeth.
It's not going to work.
Why
I
not?
hate to tell you.
But let's put it to the test. These congressional subcommittees, they've got powers. They've got subpoena powers. The Congress is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States as having oversight over all sections of executive government that it's paying for. Why in hell's name is any arrogant, hubristic military officer or intelligence community official thinking that it's above the accountability to the Congress?
I can't answer that, but I can tell you it's a fact.
We live in very dangerous times when sections of the military and intelligence community believe they're above the law.
Now, there's obviously a good reason for secrecy, but sometimes it's overdone. You're right.
Sure. Well, Colonel, I don't think in this conversation we've got to the bottom of the Rendlesham mystery, but I've certainly given you a good opportunity to have your rebuttal to Larry Warren and other witnesses.
Well, I would suggest that someone that really interested, they need to talk to Peter Robbins. They need to go to his website, Peter Robbins, NY, New York.com, and read his 58-page rebuttal to Larry.
So he's the co-author of the book Left at Eastgate. He's the guy who wrote the book with Larry Warren, and he was apparently upset with inaccuracies, falsehoods in Larry Warren's story that he discovered subsequently, and he withdrew the manuscript, or he withdrew his cooperation with the manuscript. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, I think we've tried to shed more light on the Rendlesham mystery, sir. One thing for sure I do want to thank you for, I want to thank you for your service, and I also want to thank you for consistently, through your career, being so willing to be transparent, open, and accountable about what you saw in the forest in December of 1980. Colonel
I almost
Chuck
wish I'd seen the little green men or whatever, but I didn't. I'm sorry I have to disappoint you.
Colonel Chuck Holt, thank you so much for talking to Reality Check. Best wishes to you, sir.
You're quite welcome.
And before we go, please don't forget to send in any questions you have for me to realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. Looking forward to answering your questions as best as we can.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.